Daniel Archer never imagined that a simple evening in Boston would turn into the kind of night that changed everything. He had promised his daughter Lily, bright-eyed and 6 years old, that they would celebrate her birthday properly. So after a long day at the auto shop, grease still faintly marking his hands, he took her to a small steakhouse, tucked between brick buildings. It wasn't fancy. Exposed walls, flickering candles, a menu that stretched his budget more than he liked to admit. But Lily only cared about fries and chocolate cake. And Daniel couldn't say no. They had just settled into their booth, Lily trying not to knock over the ketchup bottle again. When it happened, across the room a woman sat alone at a corner table. She didn't belong in a place like this. Her dress looked tailored, her jewelry delicate but unmistakably expensive. She carried herself with the kind of poise you usually only saw in magazines. And then suddenly her hand went to her throat. Her eyes widened, the color drained from her lips. For a moment the restaurant froze. Conversation stopped. Forks hovered in midair. The hum of the city outside seemed to vanish. No one moved. Daniel felt his body react before his mind caught up. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood. Lily's eyes followed him wide and uncertain. But his voice stayed calm, steady, the same tone he used when she scraped her knee. "You're okay," he murmured as he reached the woman. She couldn't answer, her breath locked. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped behind her, wrapping his arms firmly around her waist. One thrust, then another. The sound of struggle filled the air. A third push, harder, desperate. And then relief, a piece of steak shot from her mouth, landing against the table with a dull clatter. She bent forward, gasping, coughing so hard the silverware rattled. Her long dark hair fell over her face as she clutched the edge of the table. The room exhaled with her. Daniel steadied her shoulder, still catching his own breath. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, eyes searching hers. Her gaze lifted, still glossy with shock, but alive again. "8," her voice broke. "Thank you." Daniel nodded, brushing his jeans as he stood, almost embarrassed by the scattered applause that trickled through the restaurant. Boston could be a city of indifference. Already most people were turning back to their plates. But Lily sat frozen in the booth, her tiny hands pressed together, eyes locked on her father, like he was someone larger than life. He offered her a quick smile, the kind that promised everything was fine. Then he returned to his seat, his pulse still racing, unaware that saving a stranger in that dimly lit steakhouse was only the beginning. That the woman whose life he just saved was Victoria Sterling, and nothing about his world would ever be the same again. The steakhouse had almost returned to its rhythm. Plates clattered from the kitchen. Muted conversations picked up again. And waiters moved quickly between tables, as if nothing had happened. But Daniel Archer felt the active shock still pulsing in his chest. He sat back down across from Lily, who stared at him as though she had just seen a superhero step out of the pages of her picture book. He ruffled her hair gently, trying to bring her back to the simple joy of her birthday, fries and cake. Before they could take another bite, a soft voice interrupted. "Excuse me." Daniel turned, and there she was, the woman he had just saved. Her breathing had steadied, though her eyes still carried the trace of what had nearly been her last moment. Up close, the elegance of her appearance was undeniable. Not just the tailored dress or the jewelry that sparkled faintly in the candlelight, but the way she carried herself went with quiet command. "I didn't get your name," she said. Daniel stood awkward but polite. "Daniel Archer, and this is Lily." Lily gave a shy wave, cheeks still pink from the excitement. "Victoria Sterling," the woman replied with a nod. Then her gaze softened toward Lily. "I owe you both more than I can put into words." "You don't owe me anything," Daniel answered quickly. Anyone would have done the same. Her eyebrow lifted, almost amused. "No, they wouldn't have." Then her attention shifted back to Lily, who had a small slice of cake melting on the plate in front of her. "Is it her birthday?" "Yes," Daniel said, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. "6 today." Victoria's eyes flickered to the half-finished scoop of ice cream and the simple slice of chocolate cake. She hesitated for only a second before stepping away, without explanation. Daniel frowned, watching her disappear toward the back of the restaurant. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, "is she a princess?" Daniel chuckled under his breath. She might be. Moments later, Victoria returned, with the restaurant manager trailing behind her. In his hands balanced a two-tier cake, frosted pale pink, dotted with little sugar stars that shimmered beneath the light. Gasps rose around the room as the cake was placed gently on the table. Lily's eyes widened. So far they seemed to catch every sparkle at tea once. "I hope this is all right," Victoria said softly, a small smile curling her lips. "I thought she deserved something a little more magical tonight." Lily let out a gasp, so full of wonder that half the diners turned their heads. "You're a fairy," she whispered, "a real one." Victoria laughed, kneeling slightly so she was at Lily's eye level. Her laughter was warm, unguarded. Nothing like the polished image of the woman who had walked in. Earlier, Daniel stared at the cake, caught off guard. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "I wanted to," Victoria replied simply. The evening blurred after that. Victoria slid into their booth, as though she had belonged there all along. Lily chatted away about school, about her favorite cartoon, about how she was going to be an astronaut someday. Victoria listened intently, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, never once glancing at her phone. To Daniel it was disarming. She was supposed to be the kind of woman who lived in a world far removed from theirs. Yet here she was, sipping water, smiling across the table at him like she had nothing else to do but sit with them. Eventually, when Lily's yawns became too big to hide, Daniel knew it was time to go. He stood ready to thank Victoria once more and take his daughter home. But Victoria reached into her purse, pulling out a pen. She scribbled something quickly on a napkin, then slid it across the table toward him. "My number," she said, her tone gentle but firm, "in case you ever need anything." Daniel hesitated, his hand hovering over the napkin. "That's kind of you." "Take it," she interrupted softly, "please." Her fingers brushed his ass. She handed it to him. Steady, warm, insistent. Then she leaned down toward Lily. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she whispered. Lily wrapped her small arms around Victoria's neck, without hesitation. For a moment Victoria closed her eyes, returning the hug with a tenderness that surprised even her. Later, outside in the cool Boston night, Daniel buckled Lily into her booster seat, tucking the edges of her jacket around her shoulders. He slid behind the wheel of his old truck and stared once more at the napkin, before slipping it into the glove box. His jaw tightened. He didn't do rich women with perfect hair and lives lived in glass towers. Not him, not Lily. But what Daniel didn't know was that the woman whose number he had just hidden away was Victoria Sterling, Billionaire CEO of Sterling Global Media, and she had no intention of letting him fade into the background of her life. The next morning the rhythm of ordinary life returned. A tea leased on the surface. Daniel Archer was back at the garage, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the smell of oil and steel hanging in the air. Engines were familiar, bolts and wrenches made sense. But the folded napkin, now tucked into his jacket pocket, it felt heavier than any part he carried. He hadn't meant to keep it. He told himself he'd toss it with the morning trash. Yet there it was, pressed close to his chest, like something that mattered more than he wanted to admit. His co-worker Lewis leaned against the bay door, chewing on a granola bar, eyes flicking toward him with a grin. "So you're going to call her, Daniel?" Daniel didn't look up. He kept his hands busy, tightening a bolt with more force than necessary. "Who?" Louis laughed. "Don't play dumb. The woman from the steakhouse. The one you saved like some kind of hero in a movie. Gorgeous, looked like she belonged on a runway." Daniel wiped his hands on a rag, forcing calm. "She gave me her number. I didn't ask for it." "Not an answer," Louis teased, shaking his head. "Unless she's married or dangerous. I don't see the complication." Daniel said nothing. Instead, he leaned further into the engine, letting the hum of the shop drown out the questions. He wasn't ready to face. The truth was simple. Women like her didn't belong in his world. He had bills stacked in the kitchen drawer, an old truck that coughed to life on cold mornings, and a daughter who depended on him for everything. He didn't have space for fairy tales, especially the kind written in glossy ink on the society pages. That night the house was quiet, except for the scratch of crayons on paper. Lily sat at the kitchen table, her tongue poking out slightly as she colored a picture of a dinosaur, its legs far too short for its body. Daniel rinsed a mug at the sink, glancing over at her. "Daddy," Lily said suddenly without looking up. "She likes Triceratops." Daniel frowned. Who? The lady from the restaurant, Lily answered, her voice certain. She told me, she said it was the underdog. Strong, even though it looked small. Daniel's hand froze on the dish towel. The memory surfaced. Victoria's laugh, soft but sincere. As she leaned toward Lily in the booth. The way she had listened as if every word mattered. Lily kept coloring, her small voice drifting through the room. She also said you had strong arms. Strong enough to help anybody. Daniel almost dropped the mug. He turned, studying his daughter. Her eyes were wide with innocence, but her words carried weight. Kids didn't filter truth the way adults did. They remembered what mattered. He dried his hands slowly, the napkin in his pocket suddenly impossible to ignore. Maybe this wasn't about him. Maybe it was about the way Lily's face had lit up when Victoria brought out that pink cake, the way she had hugged her like they had known each other longer than an evening. By the time Lily had climbed into bed, her dinosaur drawing propped proudly on her nightstand, Daniel stood in the hallway with his phone in hand. He stared at the number scribbled in quick, elegant handwriting. His thumb hovered over the screen, hesitation fighting with something deeper, something that felt like hope. Finally, he dialed the line, rang once, twice. Then her voice came, clear and confident, yet softer than he expected. Hello, Daniel swallowed. It's Daniel Archer from the other night. There was a pause, followed by the faintest smile in her tone. I was wondering if you'd call. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I should, he admitted. And why did you? He glanced at the closed door to Lily's room, her nightlight casting a glow beneath the frame. Because my daughter thinks you're magic. Victoria laughed quietly, a low sound that settled deep in his chest. I like her already. Daniel exhaled slowly, his resolve loosening. I think you left us tickets to the museum. I did, she said gently. Well, maybe you'd like to use one of them. Another pause, warm this time tomorrow noon. Daniel nodded to himself, though she couldn't see. Tomorrow, when he hung up the kitchen, was still. The napkin lay on the counter now, no longer hidden. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt the faint stirring of something unfamiliar. Something that might just be the start of a story he never thought he had of. The museum was alive, with the sounds of children's footsteps echoing against marble floors, their laughter bouncing through the cavernous halls. Daniel Archer held Lily's small hand as they stood near the entrance, his eyes scanning the crowd. He hadn't been to the Boston Museum of Natural History in years, not since his own school field trips. And now he felt strangely out of place, but Lily's excitement was enough to steady him. She wore her sunflower yellow dress, the one she insisted was lucky, and she bounced on her toes, craning her neck toward the fossil displays she couldn't wait to see, and then she appeared. Victoria Sterling stepped through the doors, right on time. But if Daniel had expected the poised woman from the steakhouse, dressed in diamonds and polished, he was mistaken. She wore jeans, a plain hoodie, and sunglasses that concealed more than her eyes. She looked almost ordinary, still striking, still graceful, but without the armor of her usual world. Hey Lily, she said warmly, crouching slightly so she was at the little girl's level. Ready to see some dinosaur bones? Lily lit up instantly, her shyness melting away. I've been practicing my dinosaur walk, she announced. Victoria's laughter was soft, genuine. Show me without hesitation. Lily stomped down the hallway, with tiny but determined steps, arms bent like claws. A few heads turned as she let out her best growl. Victoria clapped her hands lightly. That's fierce, she said. I think you scared a few people. Daniel found himself smiling, a little caught off guard by how Victoria slipped into their world. No hesitation, no distraction, just there. Fully present. As they moved through the exhibits, Lily became the guide. She darted from one fossil to another, pulling both of them along. Victoria never resisted. She listened to every word Lily said. How the Triceratops was her favorite because it was the underdog. How she thought pterodactyls looked like dragons. How she secretly wanted to live in the dinosaur age just for one day. Victoria asked questions, not the polite kind meant to fill silence, but the kind that invited Lily to share more. Daniel noticed. He noticed how she never once reached for her phone, how her attention never drifted when Lily launched into a 6-year-old's version of a lecture. and he noticed the way she glanced at him sometimes. Quietly, as though she was studying him with the same care she gave his daughter in the planetarium. The three of them leaned back in reclining seats as the stars spread across the dome above. Lily nestled into Daniel's side, eyes wide with wonder, whispering every time she recognized a constellation. Victoria sat beside them, close enough that Daniel could feel her presence, even in the dark, when the narrator's voice filled the room, guiding them through galaxies far beyond reach. Daniel's gaze drifted to a silhouette. She wasn't the untouchable woman from another world. She was just a woman sitting there with them, breathing the same air. Afterward, they grabbed hot dogs from a cart outside and sat on a bench overlooking the park. Lily swung her legs back and forth as she bit into hers, ketchup dotting her cheek. Daniel reached for a napkin, but Victoria beat him to it, leaning in gently to wipe the smear away. Lily didn't flinch. She simply smiled, as though this was the most natural thing in the world. "You're good with her," Daniel said quietly. "She makes it easy," Victoria replied. Daniel studied her for a long moment, the city buzzing in the background. He couldn't quite piece together why someone like her would want to spend the day with them. But when he looked at Lily laughing at something Victoria whispered, he realized it didn't matter. What mattered was the way his daughter's eyes sparkled, the way she seemed lighter somehow. And for the first time in a very long time, Daniel felt the faint tug of possibility. Like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a world too far from his own. It was standing right beside him in jeans and a hoodie, holding a hot dog and smiling at his little girl. If there was nowhere else she'd rather be. The city lights glowed like scattered jewels against the night sky. As Victoria Sterling stepped out of the elevator into her penthouse, the day's laughter still lingered in her mind. Lily's stomping dinosaur walk, Daniel's quiet smile as he watched his daughter shine. The way the afternoon had felt oddly simple, almost ordinary, and for Victoria ordinary had never felt so rare. She set her bag down on the marble counter, heels clicking against polished floors. Normally she would slip into another round of meetings, calls stretching late into the night, decisions that carried weight across continents. But tonight the silence of the penthouse pressed indifferently. She reached for her phone, staring at the flood of notifications. Paris board meeting. A merger call, an invitation to the Met Gala. Her calendar blinked with urgency. She pressed her finger to the screen and began canceling. One meeting postponed, another pushed back. The gala declined with a polite note. She didn't even bother to read twice. Natalie, her longtime assistant, appeared from the study, tablet in hand. She stopped short, eyebrows raised. "You just cancelled Paris." "I rescheduled," Victoria said, her voice steady for when. Victoria's eyes drifted toward the floor. 2 ceiling windows. The skyline glittered endlessly, but she had spent years staring at it without really seeing it. "I don't know yet." Natalie blinked. "You haven't left a meeting hanging in 6 years." Victoria turned slowly, arching an eyebrow. "Do you have a point?" Her assistant set the tablet down, folding her arms. "You've moved meetings, delayed a merger, and turned down a gala all in 1 week. That's not just rescheduling, that's avoidance, Warren." "Maybe I'm tired," Victoria murmured, walking toward the terrace doors. Natalie studied her eyes, narrowing with something between curiosity and concern. "Or maybe you care about something else now." Victoria didn't reply. Instead, she opened the glass door and stepped outside. The cool air swept against her face as she leaned on the railing, the city stretching below her. From up here she had always felt untouchable. But tonight she didn't want to be above 80. She wanted to be back at that museum bench, watching Lily swing her legs, hearing Daniel's quiet gratitude in the middle of all that noise. She closed her eyes. For years she had built a fortress of schedules, strategy and control. Every event, every deal, every step had been calculated to protect the empire her father left behind. And yet none of it had given her what one afternoon with a mechanic and his little girl had managed to spark. Peace, real peace. Her phone buzzed again on the counter inside, but she didn't move. She thought of Lily's innocent laughter, Daniel's steady voice when he said, "You're good with her." And those words had clung to her like an anchor, reminding her of something she hadn't realized she was missing. Natalie appeared in the doorway, her voice gentler this time. "You've never been one to ignore the world." What's changed? Victoria's gaze stayed fixed on the skyline. I think I'm just done pretending that any of it matters more than this. Natalie tilted her head. This. Victoria finally turned, a soft smile flickering at the corner of her lips. A little girl who made me laugh, and a man who looked at me like I was human, not a headline. For the first time in years, she felt the edges of her carefully built image blur. And instead of fearing it, she welcomed the crack in the armor. Because maybe, just maybe, the life she had been chasing wasn't the life she truly wanted. The city below pulsed with power and ambition. But up here on her terrace, Victoria understood something new. The quiet moments with Daniel and Lily had given her more than her empire that ever could, and she wasn't ready to let that go. The invitation came quietly, slipped into conversation, as if it were nothing more than a suggestion. Yet by the time Daniel Archer stood in front of the narrow doorway between a laundromat and a bakery in downtown Boston, he knew this was no ordinary dinner. He hesitated, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. His boots scuffed from a long day at the garage. The address Victoria Sterling had given him looked unremarkable, just a brass handle on a plain glass door. But when he stepped inside, the world shifted. Warm light spilled over polished wood floors. Velvet chairs and deep navy lined the walls. And somewhere above, a string quartet played softly, their music drifting like smoke. It didn't feel like a restaurant, it felt like a secret. A hostess greeted him by name, leading him through a hidden corridor, lined with shelves of books, until they emerged onto a rooftop garden. Fairy lights glowed overhead, casting the city skyline in a softer hue. Victoria was already there, standing near a table set for two, her white blouse tucked neatly into tailored slacks. Hair swept back, makeup barely there, no entourage, no camera flashes. Just her when she turned and saw him. A genuine smile curved her lips. "You came," she said. "Curiosity got the better of me," he admitted, glancing around at the hidden oasis. She gestured toward the table. "You hungry?" The waiter lifted silver covers to reveal grilled salmon, roasted squash, a citrus salad. Daniel hesitated, then picked up his fork. "You didn't think I'd say no, did you?" "I hoped you wouldn't," she replied softly. They ate quietly at first, the hum of the city around them. Finally, Daniel set his fork down, leaning forward. "So what is this place, a private club?" Victoria's eyes held his. "Invitation only, I own part of it." He gave a short laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Of course you do," he shook his head. "Look, I'm not blind, Victoria. This isn't some spontaneous dinner. You've got people who set tables like this, places that shine like this, and I've got a kid who thinks boxed mac and cheese is gourmet." She didn't flinch. "I know." "Do you?" His voice was steady but edged. "Because I can't afford a night like this. Not even close. And I can't be part of someone's game. I've seen how this story plays out. Guys like me were a distraction, a charity case. Something to remember fondly when the shine wears off." Her gaze didn't waver. "This isn't a game, Daniel, not for me. I didn't ask you here to show off what I own. I asked you here because I wanted to sit across from someone. WHO doesn't look at me like a headline." For a long moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint music. Daniel studied her face, searching for any crack of insincerity. But all he found was a kind of exhaustion. Loneliness wrapped in elegance. He exhaled slowly. "So what do you actually do?" "I run a company my father built. I sit in boardrooms full of people who pretend to care. I make decisions that change lives for people I'll never meet. And at the end of it, I go home to silence." She paused, her voice lower now. "I'm tired of being admired by strangers and ignored by everyone who should matter." Daniel tilted his head, his expression softening. "Sounds lonely." "It is," she admitted. He picked up his glass, swirling the wine absent-mindedly. "So why me?" Her answer was quiet but certain. "Because you looked at me like I wasn't breakable. And because you didn't ask me for anything." Daniel leaned back, the weight of her words settling deep. He thought of Lily, of the way Victoria had listened to her without distraction. Maybe this wasn't about worlds colliding. Maybe it was about finding a space where both could simply exist. Messy, imperfect, Real. As the city hummed around them, Daniel realized the rooftop wasn't just Victoria's secret. Tonight it was an invitation to trust, to believe that she wasn't asking him to step into her world. She was asking to step into his. The auditorium buzzed with restless chatter, the kind that filled every corner before the curtain rose. Daniel Archer sat in the third row, Lily's backpack on the floor beside him, and a folded paper program in his hand. He checked the time, his chest tight with something he didn't want to name. The seat beside him was still empty. He told himself it didn't matter, that Lily would shine, whether anyone else showed up or not. Still, he couldn't stop glancing at the doors. Then, just as the lights dimmed, a familiar voice brushed against his ear. "Sorry, I'm late." Victoria Sterling slid into the seat beside him, cheeks flushed from the cold, her sleek black coat falling away as she settled in. She leaned close, whispering, "My car got boxed in by a delivery truck. I had to walk from 6th. Daniel didn't turn fully, but the relief in his voice betrayed him. "You made it, of course." "I did," she replied softly. The curtain lifted, and Lily appeared in a row of children dressed as flowers, her sunflower costume slightly crooked, but her grin wide enough to light the stage. Daniel leaned forward, heart swelling. Lily's eyes scanned the crowd until they found him. Then she spotted Victoria. Her smile grew impossibly bigger, her petals wobbling as she waved. When her moment came, Lily stepped forward and delivered her single line. "The sun helps me grow," with all the determination of a Broadway star. Victoria clapped louder than anyone, her eyes bright, as if she had never seen anything more important in her life. After the final bow, the hallway erupted with kids in crumpled costumes, and parents herding them with juice boxes. Lily came running, her sunflower headpiece bobbing, as she threw herself into Daniel's arms. "Did you see me?" she asked breathlessly. "You were the best sunflower I've ever seen," Daniel said, kissing her temple. Victoria crouched beside them, her voice warm. "You absolutely stole the show." Lily beamed. "You came." "I told you I would." Victoria said it was Lily who suggested pancakes, her energy still bouncing. Daniel opened his mouth to argue it was a school night, but Victoria cut in with a playful grin. "One pancake with fruit, and I'll bribe your dad with coffee." They were tucked into a booth at a corner cafe that smelled of syrup and nostalgia. The tables were scratched, the jukebox played songs older than all of them, and Lily sat in the middle, swinging her legs as she devoured strawberries and whipped cream. Daniel watched her, then turned to Victoria. "You didn't have to come," he said quietly. "I wanted to," she replied. His eyes searched hers. "You're not trying to prove something, are you?" She set down her coffee. "No, I'm just showing up, that's different." For a moment silence stretched between them, filled only by Lily's humming. Then Victoria reached into her coat and slid a garment bag across the seat. Daniel blinked. "What's this?" "An invitation," she said. "My company's charity gala tomorrow night." He frowned. "That's not really my scene." "It's mine," she admitted. "But I don't want to go through it alone. I want people to see me with you. Not because I need to make a statement, but because I want to remind myself I'm allowed to choose something for me." Daniel hesitated, fingers brushing the zipper of the bag. "Do I have to wear a penguin suit?" "You do," she teased, "and I already had one tailored for you." He stared at her. "You what?" "Lily gave me your measurements," she said, biting back a smile. "She sold you out." Daniel shook his head, trying not to laugh. "She's very persuasive." Lily looked up from her pancake syrup on her cheek. "Daddy, you look like James Bond." Victoria leaned back, her eyes softening. 7 o'clock, don't be late." Daniel didn't answer right away, but something in the steadiness of her gaze told him this wasn't about tuxedos or galas. It was about trust. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready to take that step. The ballroom shimmered with crystal light, chandelier spilling gold across glass and silk. The air buzzed with Boston's most powerful voices. Investors, politicians, familiar faces from society pages, all gathered for Sterling Global Media's annual gala. But when Daniel Archer walked in, wearing the tuxedo that fit him like it had been made for no one else, every whisper in the room seemed to pause. He looked almost out of place, yet somehow he belonged, steady, grounded, carrying himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew who he was. Victoria Sterling found him instantly. Her silver gown caught the light as she moved through the crowd, and for a moment the gala faded away. When she reached him, her smile was soft but unguarded. "You clean up shockingly well," she teased. Daniel's lips curved. "And you look like a comet," he said, his voice low. Her laughter spilled, genuine and unpolished. "Is that a compliment?" "It is if you've ever seen one." She slid her arm through his, and together they became a picture that no headline could capture. The billionaire and the mechanic side by side, unshaken by the weight of eyes around them. She introduced him to board members and investors. Two men with two white teeth and women with two perfect smiles. Daniel shook every hand, answered every question, never flinching, never shrinking. He didn't pretend to be part of their world. He simply stood in his own beside her, and that was enough. Later, the music swelled. Victoria took the stage, her voice carrying authority, as she spoke about the company's future, its commitment to innovation, its responsibility to the world beyond its skyscrapers. Applause filled the room when she finished, but when she stepped down from the podium, her eyes found Daniel's first. "Dance with me," she said. He hesitated, but only for a moment. Then he let her pull him onto the dance floor. The crowd melted away as strings filled the air, and suddenly it was just the two of them, moving in time, her hand against his shoulder, his hand firm at her back. "This is the part where you tell me I was wrong," she whispered. "About what?" "That you don't belong here." He spun her gently, then drew her closer, his voice steady. "Maybe I don't, but I belong next to you." Her breath caught, eyes glistening under the chandelier light. "That's all I wanted to hear." The world blurred, the music faded. All that remained was the quiet certainty between them. Later that night, in the stillness of her penthouse, Victoria curled onto the couch, her heels discarded on the floor, the city glowing beyond the glass. Daniel sat beside her, his tie loosened, Lily asleep in his lap from the long evening. Victoria reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's cheek, her touch delicate, protective. "She's safe with me," she whispered. Then, after a pause, she looked at Daniel. "You are too." He studied her face, the strength and vulnerability mingling in her expression. "I believe you," he said simply. She leaned in, pressing her forehead to his, her voice barely audible. "For the first time in years, I feel safe." Daniel's arms tightened gently around both her and the child between them. "So do I." And in that moment, high above the city, stripped of pretense and guarded smiles, they found something neither had known they were searching for. Not power, not escape, but the quiet certainty of belonging together. The morning of the hearing carried away. Daniel Archer hadn't felt in years. He stood outside the Boston courthouse, Lily's small hand tucked into his, the wind tugging gently at her jacket. The city bustled around them, but for him, time seemed to slow. This was the day everything would become official. He had filed for full guardianship, determined to protect Lily from the possibility of her mother reappearing, from the threat of instability he could not allow in her life. Today all that mattered was hearing the judge confirm what he already knew in his heart, that Lily was his forever. Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide, uncertain. "Daddy, she's going to come, right?" Daniel crouched so they were eye level. "She promised, didn't she?" Before Lily could answer, the sound of heels on concrete drew his attention. Victoria Sterling stepped out of a sleek black sedan, her navy coat cinched at the waist, her hair pulled into a low twist. She walked straight toward them, her eyes locked on his, with a clarity that made the noise of the city fade. "I'm here," she said softly. "You're late," he teased, though his voice carried relief. There was a fire at the Singapore office. No one was hurt, but the system crashed. She paused. "I walked out mid-call." Daniel studied her surprise flickering across his face. "You left an international crisis for this." Her answer was firm, "Because this matters more." Inside, the courtroom was hushed. The judge flipped through Daniel's file with deliberate care. "Mr. Archer," he began, "everything here appears to be in order. You understand that this petition grants you full legal and medical authority over Lily Monroe?" "I do," Daniel said, his voice steady. The judge glanced up. "You've listed no secondary guardian." Daniel hesitated, then turned to look at Victoria. She sat with Lily, her hand resting lightly on the little girl's shoulder. When their eyes met, Daniel felt a certainty settle inside him. "I'd like to add one," he said, "Victoria Sterling." The judge raised a brow. "Is she related to you?" "No," Daniel answered, his voice firm, "but she's family." The courtroom grew still. Victoria rose slowly, her gaze never leaving Daniel's. "I'm willing," she said clearly, "legally. Financially, emotionally, whatever you need. She's mine as much as she is his. Even if not by blood." The judge made a note, then nodded. "Very well. Petition granted." Lily tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, what does that mean?" He lifted her into his arms, holding her close. "It means you're stuck with me officially forever." "Forever," she whispered, pressing her cheek against his shoulder. That evening, the air in Daniel's small kitchen was warm, with a scent of something beyond his usual box dinners. He stood at the stove in an apron, stirring rice with a concentration that made Victoria smile as she leaned against the counter, glass of wine in hand. "What is this?" she asked, laughter in her voice. "Dinner," he said, a little sheepish. "Figured I'd try something fancier than grilled cheese." She moved closer, her hand brushing his arm. "You did this for me." "I did this for us," he said softly. "For showing up, for staying later." They sat by candlelight, the city glittering beyond the window. Lily, already in her pajamas, curled on the couch with the book. Daniel reached across the table, his fingers brushing Victoria's. "Do you think this is real?" she asked quietly. "I know it is," he said, "because I've never let anyone this close. Not since Lily." She circled the table, sliding into his lap without hesitation, her forehead resting against his, her voice breaking into a whisper. "I love you." He didn't flinch, he only smiled, steady and sure. "I love you too." From the couch, Lily peeked around the corner, her voice small but playful. "Are you guys kissing?" Daniel laughed, holding Victoria tighter. "Not yet." Victoria buried her face in his neck, laughing with him. And in that laughter, in that ordinary kitchen, they became something extraordinary. No longer two separate worlds, but one family, bound not by circumstance but by choice. The first photo appeared on a local news site, a grainy shot of Victoria Sterling, walking hand in hand with Daniel Archer down a rainy Boston sidewalk, Lily skipping between them in her sunflower yellow dress. Within hours, headlines followed. Billionaire heiress seen with mechanic and daughter. Sterling global media CEO's mystery family. For most of her career, Victoria had controlled every image, every word written about her. But this time she didn't call her publicist. She didn't hide. She let the world see her exactly as she was, holding the hands of the only two people who made her feel whole. When Natalie, her assistant, slid the article across her desk, Victoria only smiled. "You look happy," Natalie said. "I am," Victoria answered simply. And for once there was no need to explain. Life with Daniel and Lily slipped into a rhythm that was ordinary in the best way. Sunday mornings spent at the farmer's market, evenings where Lily drew pictures at the kitchen table, while Daniel fixed squeaky cabinet doors. Nights when Victoria traded gala gowns for sweatpants and read bedtime stories, until Lily fell asleep, with her head against her shoulder. On one of those quiet mornings, the air smelling faintly of coffee and rain, Daniel walked into the living room, carrying something small in his calloused hand. Victoria looked up from the couch where Lily was curled beside her, reading aloud in her careful 6-year-old voice. "What's that?" Victoria asked, noticing the box. Daniel sat down across from her, his expression steady, almost shy. He opened it slowly to reveal a simple gold band. No diamonds, no flash, just real. "I want you in this family," he said. "Not beside it, not halfway. I want us, you, me, and Lily, to be one thing. Always." Victoria's breath caught Daniel. Lily popped her head up, eyes wide. "Do I get to be the flower girl?" "You're not just the flower girl," Victoria said, tears breaking into her smile. "You're the whole garden." The wedding was small, tucked away from cameras and headlines. Friends gathered in a quiet field just outside the city, where string lights hung from wooden beams, and sunflowers lined the aisle. Lily wore a crown of those same yellow blooms, her laughter carrying through the air. As Daniel lifted her in his arms before turning to meet Victoria beneath the arch. Victoria walked toward them barefoot into the grass, her dress simple but radiant. When she reached him, Daniel took her hands as if they were lifelines, steady and unshakable. Their vows were not rehearsed speeches, but whispers cracked with emotion. Promises of love without conditions. Promises of presence, not perfection. When the words were said and the officiant nodded, Daniel leaned forward and kissed her, with all the certainty of a man who had spent his life waiting for this one moment. Around them applause broke out, but all they heard was Lily's cheer, high, bright, filled with joy. Later, as the evening softened into gold, the three of them stood together, under the glow of hanging lanterns. Lily spun in circles, her sunflower crown slipping sideways, while Daniel wrapped an arm around Victoria's waist. She rested her head against his shoulder, her heart finally at rest. "I used to think love had to be earned with power," she whispered, "but all it ever needed was truth." Daniel brushed a curl from her face, his voice quiet. "This is the only empire I want to build." In a modest Boston steakhouse, Daniel Archer, a single dad, leaped from his daughter Lily's birthday dinner to save a choking stranger. Victoria Sterling, a billionaire CEO. His instinctive act of heroism, followed by a shared evening of laughter and a magical pink cake for Lily, sparked an unexpected bond. From a museum outing to a gala where Victoria chose authenticity over her polished world, their story grew into a family forged by choice, not circumstance. Daniel's courage to embrace Victoria, as Lily's guardian, and their quiet wedding under sunflowers reveal a profound lesson. True connection thrives in selfless acts and genuine presence, not wealth or status. Daniel's leap to save a life, and Victoria's choice to step away from her empire for love, show that the smallest moments, or rescue a shared laugh, can build unbreakable bonds in a world often dazzled by power. Their journey reminds us that love grows where we see each other's humanity, offering safety and belonging without conditions. Lily's joy, Victoria's vulnerability, and Daniel's steadfast heart prove that family it is crafted through trust and sacrifice, transforming strangers into forever. This story urges us to act with kindness, to show up for others, and to embrace the courage to choose love over fear. If this story warmed your heart, share in the comments. Has a moment of kindness ever reshaped your life? Tell us where you're watching from, and if you believe in the power of chosen family. For more tales of love, courage, and second chances, hit subscribe now, join our community, and keep these heartfelt stories alive one moment at a time.